Everybody, and thank you for having us here today. I'm going to present an alternative view to those that perhaps Bill has expressed before. Sorry to disappoint Rory, I don't have lots of maps and the solution fully specced out here yet. It's a big problem. We're quite a small company, and we've been involved in active discussions with three of the areas that Ed Vasey talked about over the last few weeks, in helping show, with some limited examples, what could happen in areas very similar to this, in Scotland, in Lancaster, and also in the south of Wales. So we're very focused on the rural broadband problem. I'd love to sit here now and be able to go through a huge amount of detail about your area, but instead it's going to be a little conceptual. There are some relevant things, though, about what we can do here. A quick introduction to us and the kind of business that we are. It's a small business that was set up a few years ago, but owns a very large asset around the UK that was built next to the National Gas Mains pipeline. As it says here, it runs straight through this area. It's next to one of the routes that Barry was just talking about, and basically runs Kendal through the middle and all the way up to Carlisle. Our proposition to all the people they deal with is to be an optical fibre network operator, integrator and builder. We are a fibre specialist, and unlike other people that you'll hear from later in the day, we're not the kind of business that will be making propositions to give you the broadband. We're the people behind the scenes building the infrastructure to enable the future. Okay, so the challenge. Rory very kindly sent out something to us all beforehand that said, you know, this is really our agenda. We'd like, in the next 2 years, to be able to say that everybody in the area has 2 megabits, and beyond that, high speed. Well, cutting right to the chase, 2 years is not a long period of time in which to build out a lot of infrastructure. And it is about infrastructure. Fundamentally, the infrastructure, if it was capable of providing services to you all today at this level, you'd have it. It's not there, and it needs to be built. Our proposition, whenever we look at these kinds of challenges with highly rural areas, is to look at a mix of technologies. If you want to get to this relatively fast, relatively low level of broadband, then you need to think about use of existing assets. Barry's ideas are exactly the sort that we would espouse, building off existing fibre routes, doing so as cheaply and efficiently as we possibly can. Looking at where there are existing masts whereby wireless broadband signals, whether that's 3G or whether it's WiMAX, can be sent out, and looking at the existing copper wires and how those can be improved by basically using the same solution that BT is thinking of to put fibre closer to the edge of the networks so that they're able to work better. We think there's probably a lot of infill build. We do think that you have to be very careful about that. This is, as Bill was saying, the fourth utility that we're building here. It has to be as stable as gas and water and electricity networks. You can't just chuck it in the ground. It will go wrong at some point in the future, and somebody has to fix it. So broadly, our solution is wireless broadband for the very rural areas, and looking at, in the village areas, upgrading the copper broadband. It's not just BT that has access to the copper loops. For some time now, the rest of the industry has been able to come in and upgrade those as well. And you'll be hearing more about that from Aidan Paul in a moment. So, what do we all want in the end? The second part of the question is far more difficult to answer. As you've heard lots of different definitions about what next generation broadband is. Is it more than 2? Is it the next thing that BT chooses to give us? Is it what they're rolling out in London, 40, or on Virgin's network, up to 50 megabits with kind of 1 megabit upstream capacity? Is it what they have in Amsterdam, where they've started to roll out networks now that are being used actively by people, both to pull data towards them and to send it? Is it what businesses use? We regularly provide business services 1 to 20 gigabits of capacity. That's 1,000 meg, 20,000 meg. So, at the end of the day, we don't really know. Is it actually what the next generation, our children, are going to want to use? We can already see the dislocation that comes in rural communities as people choose not to live and go to towns because of the importance of these kinds of services. This is a photograph of the M1 in 1959, perhaps the last major infrastructure project that was put in place on a national level within our country. I was looking at some old documents of the protests that were put about why there should be a large amount of government or public money put into a system like this when so few people had motor cars. I don't really need to tell you what happened next. So it is the fourth utility. It has to be high quality, secure and long-term infrastructure. It has to be capable of delivering regular cycles of new technology. We know in the industry that what you put in place to actually light a fibre or a copper network at the rate of growth at the moment will be good for 5 years max. So you'll be out there upgrading, putting new kit, new telecommunications equipment on it very, very soon. It has to be capable of delivering the internet of the future. I'll come on to what that might be in a moment, because you don't have to guess. It's happening around the world. It shouldn't be a short-term stranded investment. This is public money. To the points that Richard was making earlier on, it has to be something you know you're going to get use out of over a long period of time. And it has to be built in a way that's not a new monopoly. It has to be open to everybody. And that means the fibre has to be open to everybody, not just from a business that says it will provide services to everybody, should it come to it. Of course it will. It's got the only network. It has to be optical fibre going all the way, ultimately, to the premises and to masts, because, as we heard before, the mobile networks need this as well. Fibre is going to go all the way out to the edge. So it's a solution for far more than just going into people's homes and businesses. These are the sorts of things that are happening. So the slide's getting a bit garbled there, I think, at the top. But you know, the great myth of a certain amount of capacity being all you need is a self-serving statement made by people who want you to spend money with their networks today. We can all see, just by looking backwards, what's happening to the internet and where it's going into the future. These services here are the ones being used at the moment in the Netherlands, where a company called Regifiber is rolling out aggressively open access fibre networks that are being used already for all of these services. So we don't need to crystal ball gaze anymore. We can actually see what they're going to be used for. But there's a big problem. One of Rory's colleagues within his party arrived at his desk, I think, at the start of government to find a note from his predecessor that's saying that all the money is gone. So we know this costs a lot of money. 20 to 30 billion has been estimated at for the whole country. So what are we going to do? If there's not a lot of cash there, where are we going to spend it? There is a digital divide today, and there will be one in the future between rural and town and city communities, for the simple reason that it's easier to make a business case for those of us that have shareholders who demand profits to go into the areas that are more densely built up. So we agree with Bill, you have to put public support into this if you're going to make it happen. But what can we afford to do? Can we really afford a number like that? There's a policy decision to be made. This is our view, conceptually, if you like, about what you should do. Now, you can put this on maps and they'll come out looking like the ones that Barry made. The 20 to 30 billion number could say, let's using rough estimates, could be something like the kind of 5 billion on top of where BT is now, in order to provide the FTTC rollout that sits on top of the network to get into local street cabinets and then upgrade them so you can provide those kinds of solutions. It need not be only BT that can offer that solution. Equally, those networks can be built to the mast. So the critical question is, if you're going to put money in, and you're going to put public money in, what do you put it in within the realms of USC and getting something quickly now, in the next 2 years in Cumbria, and something that's not going to be stranded investment all the way into the future? And for us, the answer is relatively simple. It is optical fibre, it is infrastructure, and it requires focus so that you can deliver today's services quickly, and then you can deliver tomorrow's thereafter. I'll flick through those. There were a few examples later, but I can talk you through those if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris, very much. Thank you. Now, Aidan Paul, Chief Executive of